print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hi, this is Jeff Shapiro, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the Saturday-Sunday, June 27th, 28th issue of the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. How Italy's combative leader created its most stable government in years. Giorgia Meloni was Trump's greatest European ally. Her fight with the American president underscores what has been a surprisingly effective political style. In October of 2023, Giorgia Meloni was facing a domestic crisis. A hot mic had captured her longtime partner, the father of her child, and a news anchor, making sexist jokes off air. In the viral video and audio, he was heard asking his female co-workers whether they minded if he touched his package. One of the female co-workers shot back that he was already touching himself. Then he propositioned one of them to join a threesome, even a foursome. The audio had all the trappings of a tabloid scandal. It was embarrassing, it was vulgar, and politically problematic. So Meloni did what Italians have come to expect of their fiery prime minister. She publicly dumped him. My relationship with Andrea Giambruno, which lasted nearly 10 years, ends right here, she wrote in a social media post the morning after the recordings leaked. She thanked him for giving me the most important thing in my life, which is our daughter, Ginevra. While Giambruno publicly apologized, stating his life disintegrated overnight, Meloni's message was clear. Next. The incident was classic Meloni. Immediate, brutal, and emblematic of her reputation as a leader who doesn't tolerate affronts to her dignity and knows exactly when to push back, a political acumen that was on display earlier this month when she traded barbs with Donald Trump. After he accused her of begging him for a picture, she had one message for the U.S. president: neither I nor Italy ever beg. Bombastic politics is increasingly a norm, and Meloni is one of its most astute practitioners. It propelled her career in a country where chauvinistic attitudes are deeply rooted. It helped her become one of Trump's most important European allies, someone who seemed spiritually aligned in political style and who stood by the American president even after he imposed tariffs and threatened to take Greenland, even though she didn't agree. It has also helped her retain her populist base, even as she shed her far-right image among mainstream conservatives at home and abroad. Most of all, this mix of pugnacity and pragmatism has enabled the 49-year-old Meloni, Italy's first female prime minister, to achieve a rarity for Italy, a stable government. Much of Europe is in the throes of political turmoil. In France, President Emmanuel Macron has cycled through 4 prime ministers in less than 2 years. Germany's government has seen its poll ratings collapse, and a far-right party is now the country's most popular. Just this week, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, announced that he was stepping down, leading to the United Kingdom's 7th Prime Minister in a decade. Then there's Italy, where the most immediate national controversy is its failure to qualify for the World Cup. Meloni's government is on track to outlast all previous ones since the fall of the fascist regime in 1945. She can be very kind and warm, said Carlo Fidanzi, a politician with Meloni's Brothers of Italy party who has known her for decades. But when it comes to standing up for her beliefs and defending her dignity or that of her country, she doesn't hold back. She is reasonable, but she can also be tough if you cross her. Although Meloni's Brothers of Italy party espouses traditional family values, the Prime Minister never fit neatly into a conservative mold. She and her sister, Ariana, another high ranking party member, were raised in a predominantly working class neighborhood in Rome by a single mother who penned romance novels. Their father, whom Maloney described as a communist sympathizer, left the family to settle in Spain. As a teenager, Maloney entered far-right politics as a youth activist in the Italian social movement, founded by former members of Benito Mussolini's fascist party after World War II. By 2006, she joined Parliament and was appointed the youngest deputy speaker in Italian history, and 2 years after that, the youngest minister. She founded her Brothers of Italy party in 2012. In a political landscape dominated by men, she was the rare woman, of which she was sometimes reminded. When she decided to run in Rome's mayoral election in 2016 while pregnant, her right-wing peers sneered, not that it stopped her. "If this is how they treat me, and I am a privileged person," Maloney said at the time, "just imagine how they treat a call center worker on a temporary contract who wants to have a baby. No one should be able to tell women what they can or can't do because of their pregnancy." In 2022, she fired up her populist base to run for prime minister, railing against illegal immigration, same-sex parenting, and the left's cultural dominance in a strong Roman accent that is a reminder of her humble upbringing. At the same time, she offered safer and more moderate pro-NATO, pro-American, and fiscally prudent positions, explicitly rejecting her far-right past. Weeks before the elections, Maloney released videos in multiple languages saying that the Italian right unambiguously condemns the fascist regime's suppression of democracy and anti-Semitic policies. As prime minister, she moderated her aggressive anti-European Union populism in favor of closer cooperation with other member states on issues such as combating illegal immigration. After she won it in a landslide, she ditched her sneakers and her more colorful outfits in favor of a more polished look of tailored neutral or pastel pantsuits, many of them from a little-known fashion label near Milan called The Exterior, or, if the occasion called for it, Armani. Her light brown hair became increasingly blonde. Her left-wing critics complained that her softer, feminine appearance whitewashed her harsh right-wing rhetoric, even as her face hid nothing. The eye rolls, the pinched mouth, making no secret of her mood or of her contempt for other politicians. 2 years ago, Maloney traveled to Naples for the inauguration of a new sports complex in a formerly crime-ridden area. Government ministers, local dignitaries, and journalists were there to greet her. Among them was Vincenzo De Luca, a center-right governor who was previously caught on camera describing Maloney as a stronza, the Italian equivalent of bitch. The prime minister quietly took note. Arriving in a crisp white shirt that day, she walked straight to him to introduce herself. "President De Luca, I am that bitch Maloney," she said, shaking her hand. "How are you?" By the time Trump's second term arrived, Maloney was well poised to be his go-to European ally. She shared an ideological affinity with the MAGA movement and was close to Elon Musk, who helped bring them together. Trump invited her to his 2025 inauguration, the only European head of government to attend, and called her a great leader. But the war in Iran proved too much, even for Maloney. The attack in February came as a surprise to European leaders. Italy, which depends heavily on gas imports, was especially exposed to the energy crunch that it caused, prompting Maloney to fly to the Gulf and to Algeria to try to firm up supplies. European refusal to participate in the war frustrated Trump, who swiftly renewed his threats to withdraw the U.S. from NATO. At first, Maloney avoided directly criticizing Trump, even though by the spring of 2026, 83% of Italians said that they had no confidence in his ability to do the right thing on world affairs, according to a Pew Research Center poll. It was the Pope that finally broke them. After Pope Leo XIV criticized the war effort, Trump lashed out. It's one thing for an American leader to attack the Pope, but in Catholic Italy, home of the Vatican, that behavior crosses an even brighter red line. Under pressure from public opinion, Meloni had little choice. She called Trump's insults unacceptable. She is the one who is unacceptable, Trump retorted. The Group of Seven summit in France earlier this month was a chance to clear the air. On the surface, Trump's meeting with world leaders went smoothly. There were no angry outbursts. There were smiles. Allies praised the deal that he secured to stop the war in Iran. But beneath the surface, there were big unresolved questions. Would the Iran ceasefire last? What does the U.S. plan to do about NATO? A hot mic caught Macron telling Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that he early had a difficult talk with Trump. Meloni got alone time with Trump, engaging in what appeared to be a friendly conversation on a beige sofa. When European Council President Antonio Costa saw Trump and Meloni together, he told them, "You're friends again." Meloni corrected him, "We have always been friends." The Italian right-wing tabloid Libero published a front-page cartoon of Trump serenading Meloni with the headline, "It's love again." Trump quickly proved them wrong. The following evening, Trump picked up a call from an Italian television reporter. The reporter asked him about Ukraine, but what Trump pivoted to was Meloni. "How is your president doing? How is she doing?" asked the president. He asserted that Meloni had begged him for a picture at the G7 summit. "I wouldn't have done it, but I felt sorry for her." After reading the exchange last Friday morning, Meloni didn't hold back. "Some things require an instant response. The statements by Donald Trump are completely made up," she said in a 33-second social video, visibly irate. "I don't know why the President of the United States behaves like this with his own allies," she continued ruefully. "It's a shame that he doesn't have the same determination toward the enemies of the West." The next day, Libero, the tabloid, published a new headline, "Trump you calone," the Italian equivalent of a jackass, but literally a testicle. The fighting escalated over the past weekend, but for now, the conflict works in Meloni's favor. "As for my popularity, being your friend certainly has not helped," she added. "I suggest you focus on yours." The statement was a sign of how much the Italian-American relationship had fallen since the inauguration. At first, Trump was viewed as someone you wanted on your side, said Lorenzo Pagliasco, a political analyst and founder of the polling firm U-Trend. Italy's electorate now considers him toxic. He's like political kryptonite. Kryptonite is something Meloni can't afford. Brothers of Italy remains the country's most popular party heading into parliamentary elections, likely next year. But her coalition recently lost a key referendum on a constitutional reform, and a new far-right party, led by a former Army general, is threatening to fracture her majority. Meloni's coalition has survived this long partly because it hasn't rocked the boat, analysts say. It has managed Italy's fragile finances reasonably well, but hasn't pushed through the kind of ambitious reforms that Italy desperately needs to boost its chronically low growth. She's also thrown red meat to her culturally conservative base, making it a crime for Italians to pursue surrogacy abroad. It is already illegal domestically, creating yet another obstacle for gay couples who want to start a family. There is a saying in Italy, "Those who last the longest are those who don't cause discontent," said Pagliasco, the pollster. More than achieving substantial results, the political priority is to not create too much trouble. That includes not taking a breakup with America too far. She has instructed her government ministers to attend the July 4th celebrations at the U.S. Embassy in Rome, according to members of her party. These relationships don't begin or end because of who happens to be in power at a particular moment, Meloni said in a televised interview on Tuesday. "We sometimes talk about foreign policy as if it were Temptation Island," she said, referencing a reality dating show. "Foreign policy is more complex than that. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Can Tony Dokupil weather the war at CBS? The evening news anchor has been thrust into the spotlight amid criticism of his network and its editor-in-chief. In December, Barry Weiss met Tony Dokupil for dinner on Manhattan's Upper West Side with a proposal. She wanted to make him the face of CBS News. During her search for a new evening news anchor, Weiss had named Anderson Cooper and Brett Baer, both under contract with other networks, as potential contenders. Now, at a table inside an upscale Italian restaurant, CBS News President Tom Sibrowski, the show's executive producer Kim Harvey, and Weiss presented their vision to Dokupil. I think we all left that meeting feeling really confident that we had chosen the right person, Weiss said in an interview. A former magazine writer with tassels of dark brown hair made for on-air stardom, Dokupil would come from CBS Morning's co-host to one of the most coveted jobs in TV news, the role that made Walter Cronkite the most trusted man in America. The mission is to try to change the course of history at this particular broadcast. Dokupil, who's 45 years old, said in an interview, he would also become the de facto poster boy of Weiss's network reinvention. Since CBS parent Paramount acquired her news and opinion startup last year and appointed her CBS News editor-in-chief, the nearly century-old broadcast network has undergone a bold upheaval. Longtime staffers have criticized her decision-making as partisan, firings as targeted, and her TV news experience as significantly lacking. CBS News has denied any political interference. Ahead of his first broadcast, Dokupil made a litany of public promises. He vowed to be more transparent than Cronkite, to prioritize viewers over the network's corporate owners, and to listen to everyday Americans over academics and elites. I think all journalism has a trust problem, Dokupil told the Wall Street Journal. If we're the yogurt industry and 70% of people didn't trust yogurt, it would be a crisis. I think it's a crisis for journalism. In his first months on the job, the show's gaps have been memorialized in news reports. Weiss's overhaul has thrust him to the center of CBS tumult, which has played out against the backdrop of Paramount's deal to acquire rival media company Warner Brothers Discovery. The merger, which the Justice Department cleared this month, would also place CNN under the control of Paramount CEO David Ellison, whose father is a close ally of President Trump. It has stoked concerns from CBS staffers and media observers about the role that American politics is playing in the industry's era of mass consolidation. Dokupil insists that there are no tea leaves to read, at least as far as his program is concerned. When it comes to Barry Weiss, she's the editor-in-chief. She runs a 9 a.m. meeting and has lots of ideas, he said. When we like the idea, we use it. If we don't, and if it doesn't work for our show, we don't. Likewise, he said, I've never met David Ellison. He's never had a comment about my show. He's never called me to complain about coverage. If he tried to, it wouldn't have an impact. Dokupil's first day in the anchor chair was in early January, about a month after his dinner with Weiss. The growing pains of his quick transition have been quite public. First day, big problems here, he told millions of viewers during a broadcast when the story teased on screen didn't match the text on his teleprompter. Weiss was hands-on during the launch, and with others, she made changes to the script at the last minute, people familiar with the matter said. Soon after, Dokupil playfully discussed a series of AI-generated memes depicting Secretary of State Marco Rubio in different jobs, including the Michelin Man and the manager of Manchester United. The images referenced the numerous titles Rubio had taken on in the Trump administration. It's a sign of how Florida, once an American punchline, has become a leader on the world stage, Dokupil said, referring to the former senator's home state. Marco Rubio, we salute you. You're the ultimate Florida man. His comments, perhaps more suited for the levity of a weekday morning show, caught political fire. Dokapol told the Journal that he was making a joke, not trying to be cute about a Trump administration official, but that he wouldn't do it again. More recently, the network failed to obtain a visa for Dokapol to cover the U.S.-China summit. Instead, a last-minute workaround left him with little time to pack for a flight to Taiwan on a plane that landed shortly before his show aired. He was also paired with a cameraman, not part of the show's usual crew, who passed out on set. It was a mistake, Dokapol said of the visa. I don't know. It's all our mistake, but someone should have got a visa. Still, Dokapol said he was proud of the work that he'd done in Taiwan, while among other coverage he spoke with the son of Jimmy Lai, a former tycoon whom a Hong Kong court sentenced in February to 20 years in prison. I feel good about what we did, but I'm not going to pretend like it was our first choice. The Evening News is still a distant third to its competitors, but its May ratings were up 3% year over year, according to Nielsen data. In May, the show averaged more than 3.8 million viewers. By comparison, ABC's World News Tonight averaged 8.1 million viewers, up 14%, and NBC's Nightly News brought in 6.1 million, up 7%. Dokapol caught the attention of the Free Press, Weiss's startup, in late 2024. He and his CBS Morning co-host were interviewing the author Ta-Nehisi Coates about his book The Message, which is critical of Israel. The conversation quickly turned tense when Dokapol, who converted to Judaism in his 20s, said that the section of the book about Israel would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. The interview prompted a conversation in a CBS editorial meeting about bias and objectivity. At the time, the audio from that meeting was leaked to the Free Press, which, like Weiss herself, has consistently defended Israel in its war against Hamas. How is CBS marking October 7th? By admonishing Tony Dokapol, the outlet headline a story. If I were to do it again and the moment was the same, I would ask the very same questions, Dokapol said. Weeks before Paramount merged with Ellison Skydance in 2025, the company, which was then led by Sherry Redstone, agreed to pay $16 million to settle a suit with Trump over the editing of a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. Weiss's takeover of CBS News and her editorial decision-making have led to spats with the network's top talent that have spilled into public view. The network recently parted ways with Sharon Alfonsi, a 60 Minutes correspondent who in December accused Weiss of holding a segment critical of the Trump administration for political reasons. Weiss countered that the piece needed additional reporting. The segment eventually ran with some additional material bookending it. Cecilia Vega, another 60 Minutes correspondent and the show's executive producer, were also let go in May. And after network veteran Scott Pelley accused Weiss of murdering 60 Minutes in a recent meeting, he was fired. Pelley and Vega also accused management of making editorial decisions for political reasons, which a CBS spokesman denied. What's being called editorial interference is in reality the job description of an editor-in-chief, Weiss said. When they make comments like that, I pay attention, Dokapol said of his colleagues, but I can only speak for what's happening on this side of the street, and it's not the experience that I've had. What some employees view as a closer relationship between the Ellison family and the Trump administration has fanned the flames of internal dissent. David Ellison hosted a dinner honoring the Trump White House in April, which Weiss also attended. Dokapol was invited, but declined. While reporting for his show in Hartford, Connecticut, known as the insurance capital of the world, Dokapol scurries around, approaching strangers with boy-next-door eagerness, asking them how they feel about their health insurance as part of a series of affordability. I hate it, one woman tells him. He believes his background helps him relate to the everyday people he wants to reach, offering this summary. Parents weren't married or divorced. There's a lot of drinking. There's drugs. You got to move a lot. You have money. Then you don't have money, he said. That's the stuff of American families. Dokapil grew up mostly in Florida and Maryland, raised by public school teacher mother and a drug dealer father. If you smoked Colombian weed in the 70s and 80s, I owe you a thank you card, Dokapil wrote in his memoir, referencing the tons of marijuana that he said his father moved during that time. You paid for my swim lessons, bought me my first baseball glove, and kept me in the best private school in South Florida, alongside President George H.W. Bush's grandsons, at least for a little while. He launched his journalism career at Newsweek, writing unconventional and splashy stories about Forrest Fenn's treasure and free sperm donors. Dokapil said he was worried about the job security of writing for news websites when he began his TV career. At one point, he sold an essay to the New Republic on the drawing of blood that he underwent while converting to Judaism. I was a print reporter, making a print reporter's salary with no trust fund to fall back on, he said of the essay titled My Adult Circumcision. I needed the cash, I needed the publicity, and I thought it was a funny essay. Back when Dokapil was trying to land a full-time TV gig while working at MSNBC, his now wife, journalist Katie Turer, offered him sage wisdom. Get rid of your corduroy jacket and your glasses look, he recalls her telling him. Do 100 push-ups, put on a black t-shirt, nothing else, and put your hair up real big. I did it, he said, and ABC reached out. But he sought out CBS. I think I fit here. Would you hire me, he asked? And they did. Tur still advises him on his outfit choices and weighs in on his on-air performance. If there's any whiff of fakery or performance or an authenticity, my lovely wife will let me know about it, he said, and I'll get back to reality. Former colleagues have watched Dokapil's rise at CBS from a distance. Some of it didn't seem very Tony-like to Tina Brown, who worked with him earlier in his career. But difficult transitions can make for great stories. I think he'll probably have a wonderful memoir at the end of this period, which he should write, she said. What the obsession over divorce memoirs says about America. Have too many readers accepted one side of the story as the whole truth? It's spreading faster than a pandemic through air vents. One friend said everyone on the plane had it. Another in D.C. told me that it just hit her morning dog walk crew with a vengeance. By this time, it's a contagion people can't wait to get their hands on. I'm talking about the mega bestseller Strangers by Bella Burden, a searing divorce memoir. It chronicles her husband leaving and her shock at his decision. Burden's glamorous pedigree only adds to the story's allure and intrigue. Paternally, she descends from the Vanderbilts, and on her mother's side, she's the granddaughter of America's highest society queen, Babe Pelly. More forcefully, her story punctures the idea that wealth or social status can insulate us from humiliation and loss of agency. Burden has given women across the country an outlet to be angry, together at a specific target, her ex-husband, as proxy. It allows women to align around an accumulated weight of being interrupted and dismissed and underpaid and undervalued. But witnessing the book's reception, it disturbs me how quickly we, as readers, have accepted one side of a complicated relationship. The husband is a monster. She is our sister. Tidy narratives don't match the gray messiness of divorce. Whenever the topic of strangers comes up, and it does consistently in my professional and social groups, I can't help but bring up my one critical question. What do we think the husband's side is? Suggesting that we imagine the husband's experience during the marriage and subsequent breakup feels like I've broken a blood oath with women warriors. The reaction is swift, defensive, and many times delivered with the vitriol of an adolescent facing the cosmic injustice of screen time limits. He's despicable. He tried to take our houses. He never wanted to see the kids again. People glare at me as if I'd shot their dog. I'm not defending anyone's behavior. I'm proposing a discussion. Why do so many readers that I speak to believe that they can be a fair judge presiding over every moment of this couple's dreams and disappointments? Our refusal to sit in the gray area hasn't just infected how we digest the latest literary sensation. This mode of communicating, or not communicating, has taken over our entire political and social discourse. You're currently listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. You can love this book, as I do. This was written by Holly Peterson, by the way. You can relate to her story, as I do. We can be sisters in a common cause for a woman wronged, as I am. Bella Burton is not lying. She's telling her story as she sees it, and she deserves to be read seriously. But hers is not the whole story. And the moment we decide reading one spouse's account makes us qualified to render a verdict on the couple, we are participating in intellectual laziness. A memoir is a subjective pact with an audience, not a deposition. Having waded through a messy, money-charged divorce myself, I know that the story that your spouse tells about you is not the story you would tell about yourself. And that is precisely why I refuse to accept that we should be so certain about what the husband and strangers did or didn't do. During my own marriage's breakdown, a counselor put out wooden animal figurines. Holly sees an elephant, my husband sees a giraffe. The experiment was simple and devastating. We were not disagreeing about facts, we were seeing different realities, shaped by different needs and different wounds. It has two people looking at the same center point and seeing entirely different beasts. Unlike most readers, I didn't meet the characters and strangers on the page. I grew up in a similarly privileged New York world around 3 generations of Burton's family and came to know people in her ex-husband's orbit too, including his roommate who tragically died young of an overdose. From my vantage point, parts of the book rang true, but others did not. Burton cleverly framed her memoir as a financial thriller. After all, money is psychological, and the author felt vulnerable with sudden changes she didn't initiate or want. Burton's words leapt from the page to hyperbolic social myth-making of near financial ruin at the hands of a dastardly husband. Likewise, her husband's refusal to share custody was widely exaggerated into a story that he had abandoned his children entirely, claims that Burton didn't even make herself. But the notion of a woman with a prenup and wealthy lineages heading into real financial precarity was dubious. 4 months after the book's publication, an article in the New Yorker reported the author's sound financial standing, listing a $63 million trust, $45 million of which was destined for her and her brother after their stepmother's passing. So here's my question. Why are women so invested in Burton's financial misery? Why did so many readers need her not merely to be hurt, but to have faced near ruin? We watch politicians demean us without consequence and face the systemic stripping of our rights. I wonder if the reaction to the book is less about Burton's marriage and more an excuse to wallow in our own perceived lack of agency. Has our unity fallen into misdirected victimhood disguised as sisterhood? Bottom line today, Burton's settlement worked. She has 2 family homes and sizable child support. Her husband lives a few blocks away and sees the kids, albeit not as often as she'd like. Not quite as riveting or suspenseful as the version in the book, but hey, she did okay in the end. If we choose to collapse into a monolithic, uncritical chorus whenever a wrong woman writes a memoir, then we're trading our real potency for the cheap satisfaction of rah-rah, go-us groupthink. The personal is not always the political. Sometimes we react to injustice or betrayal by treating any foray into gradations as if it's an existential threat to progress. I happen to think the opposite is true. Women must remember how we wield power and tap it, integrate it, realize it. We earn the majority of university and master's degrees, cast more votes than men, and influence far more consumer purchasing decisions. We possess an immense, often terrifying amount of control over who our children become and how our partners behave. We are often the ultimate architects of domestic and social order. As a nation, we need to relearn how to respect the value of our opposing view on the same topic, admit how weird, off-balance, and dogmatic we become, and have the courage to disagree out loud. If we can agree on this, then we don't need to be such strangers. reimagining Robin Hood as the bad guy. Michael Sarnowski's The Death of Robin Hood portrays the former hero as a murderer. Robin Hood has long been portrayed as a swaggering hero. Errol Flynn, Kevin Costner, and even Disney's animated Fox all cast him as a noble outlaw who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. The Death of Robin Hood turns him into a villain. The film reimagines the folk hero as a violent man who murders men, women, and children. Some people are going to watch this and be like, well, not my Robin Hood, director Michael Sarnowski said. And if that's your response, Sarnowski wants you to question, why are you so attached to the hero version, and why does that mean so much to you? The Death of Robin Hood, released by A24, stars Hugh Jackman as Robin Hood, an outlaw who has no qualms about his crimes. An injury sends him into hiding at a remote priory and into the care of a nun, Jodie Comer. Her generosity forces him to consider whether he is worthy of redemption. In his traditional good guy form, Robin Hood might seem like the perfect man for this moment, where the gulf between the haves and the have-nots is wide and eat the rich narratives are common in film and television. Why make him a ruthless criminal instead? We try to turn people, politicians, social figures, into heroes or villains, Sarnowski said. There are some incredible people out there, and there are some terrible people out there, but at the end of the day, they are people. History does, in fact, show Robin Hood as more multifaceted than a simple hero or villain. There's not really one definitive version of him, said Emily Urey, an assistant professor of English at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. The legend of Robin Hood is very grassroots, drawn from mostly an oral telling of the story. In some depictions from the 13 and 1400s, he's a trickster figure, prone to casual violence in a way that can be shocking to a modern reader, she said. Sarnowski, who's known for his work on Pig and A Quiet Place, Day One, wanted to look at what Robin Hood might have been like during this medieval period. The early ballads about his saga were grotesque and brutal, he said. While the movie also acknowledges that there are myths forming around Robin Hood that suggest he may have a history of benevolent deeds, Sarnowski tilts the viewer toward not believing that. The early takeaway is, oh no, this is a pretty bad dude. This is not someone who had a great moral code, he said. Maybe he did a couple nice things along the way, but certainly that isn't how he sees himself. Turning Robin Hood into a conflicted anti-hero suggests society has been infiltrated by cynicism about anyone being able to save us. After all, if he's not a good guy, who is? If he can't take down corrupt authorities, who can? It does seem like a sort of indicator of cultural pessimism, Urey said. Sarnowski, for his part, just wants his audience to question the stories that they are told, whether they are about Robin Hood or present-day public figures. I think we're most steeped in storytelling than we've ever been, he said, yet we're worse at parsing it. What's it like to see your nude portraits sell for millions? This is by Kelly Crow. Lucian Freud's muse, Sue Tilley, talks about sleeping by the lion carpet, one of 4 of his paintings that feature her unclothed. Sue Tilley was 35 and working in a London employment office when she let British artist Lucian Freud paint her in the nude. On Wednesday, one of his 4 nudes of her sold at Sotheby's London for $39 million, the 3rd highest auction price for the artist. Mona Lisa wasn't alive when she became famous, but I am, Tilley said, of the interest in her 1995-96 portrait, Sleeping by the Lion Carpet. Freud was the 70-year-old grandson of famed psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud, and already a legend in London's art circles for painting searingly honest depictions of his friends and lovers, often in the nude. When he asked Tilley to pose for him in 1992, she felt ordinary by comparison. A single woman, half his age, who worked as a supervisor at a job center and also moonlighted as a cashier in her friend's London nightclub. But that friend, performance artist Leigh Bowery, had posed for Freud and thought that she'd make a great sitter because she was reliable and adventurous, she said, and made the introduction. Tilly, now 69, said that she remembers meeting the painter over lunch, where she could feel his eyes boring into me the whole meal. She agreed to let him paint her in part because he was funny and bought us nice food, she said, heading to his studio after her day shift ended. Each painting took around 9 months. After the first one, she rearranged her work schedule so she could pose for him during the days so he could capture her in natural daylight, which both preferred. Freud paid her about $35 at the time. He later increased it to $50. She did it because it was fun, but says she had no idea how valuable her portraits would eventually be. I figure I'm probably worth about €100 million, she said. Auctions have actually resold her portraits for about $129 million, including Lion Carpet. Today, their collaboration is considered one of the triumphs of the 20th century portraiture. Freud's 4 monumental paintings of a naked Tilly sitting, sleeping, or sprawling on the floor of his studio have since been exhibited by museums and coveted by collectors the world over, with critics hailing her voluptuous, vulnerable body in sculptural, architectural terms. Sleeping by the Lion Carpet represented the final, culminating portrait of their series, which may also explain why it sold for $39 million, said auctioneer Oliver Barker. The canvas has been in myriad exhibitions of Freud's works, with critic Martin Gaylord writing that the portrait outdoes Courbet's Bathers and similar performances from the past in sheer monumentality of physical presence. Dolby's estimated Lion Carpet would sell for between $33 and $46 million. The nearly 8-foot canvas surpassed the $33.6 million paid in 2008 by Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich for a companion view of Tilly's 1995's benefit supervisor sleeping. Sotheby's version on Wednesday now ranks behind a 1994 view of Tilly benefit supervisor resting that sold for $56.2 million in 2015. Freud's overall $86.3 million record is held by his 1981-83 large interior W22 after Waldo, which Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen's estate sold 4 years ago. Tilly enjoyed being one of Freud's greatest muses, especially because no sexual friction existed between them. A relief, she said. Seeing herself on canvas for the first time in his studio was difficult, though because she didn't exactly like her body. But she felt better as Freud's portraits of her gained increasingly acclaim. The rowdy captain of the Barstool Sports pirate ship. In his new book, Dave Portnoy lays out his unique style. Hire great people and let them run wild. Nantucket, Massachusetts. In a recent morning, a tanned Dave Portnoy appeared to be living his best rich guy life. He was clad in shorts and a t-shirt, barefooting around his $42 million Nantucket estate, while his girlfriend, Cameron Deolia, and 2 rescue dogs followed their own rhythm. Out back, enormous sliding doors were spread wide, opening the house to the sea and the sky. That bounty has come from Barstool Sports, a pirate ship of an online media company that he founded in 2003 as an outlet for 2 great passions, sports and gambling. Its contentious rise has not only made Portnoy wealthy, but also a polarizing social media celebrity who prefigured the rise of the atmosphere and the MAGA movement. Barstool can claim some of this era's biggest podcast hits, including Call Her Daddy, in which 2 20-something women blew up the internet with frank talk about oral sex. His pizza reviews have become an institution. I have a unique ability to drive traffic, Portnoy says in a tone that makes it sound as much a burden as a gift. I do waver back and forth between, you're out, you're 49, you don't have to do it anymore, and then the content brain of me is like, gotta keep pushing, gotta stay relevant, he said. Portnoy's populist currency is such that the man who has visited President Trump at the White House was recently sought out by Graham Plattner, Maine's left-wing Democratic candidate for Senate. Plattner recently released a campaign ad bashing the private equity owners of the Boston Red Sox. An operative wanted to know if Portnoy, a voice of the everyman, wanted to engage. This struck Portnoy, who's Jewish, albeit one who claims not to have set foot in a synagogue since his bar mitzvah, as odd, since Plattner long had a Nazi-style tattoo on his chest. I wrote back like, "You're talking about the Nazi guy, right?" he replied. "I'd be happy talking about this tattoo and him being a Nazi. I'm not as interested in baseball takes," Plattner, who declined to comment for this article, said he did not know the tattoo was a Nazi symbol. For those interested in how Portnoy became Portnoy, they can read his new book, Cancel Me If You Can. It's part Barstool origin story, part unorthodox management manual, and part rebuttal to the critics who have shadowed his rise. The experience was not fun by his account. A ghostwriter was hired and turned out a draft. Portnoy felt that it was off, so he redid it himself. Cancel Me If You Can settles some scores with agents, world destroyers, certain disapproving journalists, rich, spoiled kids who just graduated from their elite, small, East Coast liberal college 15 minutes ago and had never worked a day in their life, Alice Cooper and Sophia Franklin, the Call Her Daddy stars, willing to step on my neck and burn any bridge to get ahead, and the many critics who have branded Portnoy a misogynist. You're currently listening or reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Review and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Mostly, though, it is a hero's romp through a media revolution. When we meet Portnoy, the University of Michigan grad, has quit a sales job to publish a Boston sports newspaper written in the style of a couple guys grabbing at a bar. It is hardly an overnight success. 6 years in, he was still living in his girlfriend's mother's house. Then comes the internet. It turns out Portnoy is perfect for blogging. Even when crass humor, like a joke about the size of Tom Brady's toddler son's genitalia, crosses the line, it still draws clicks. Portnoy also seems to intuit that controversies aren't to be softened but stoked, even staged for more attention. We have to make content, so we're entertainers, is how he explains his barstool persona. That is, the Boston guy who calls buddies only by their nicknames, lets everyone at the bar know when his team wins, and would sacrifice their firstborn if Brady asked. By the time Call Her Daddy came around in 2018, Portnoy's loyal audience, the Stoolies, was a kind of launch pad for other talent. Selling a majority stake to the Chernin Group had allowed him to pocket $5 million, ending his financial worries. Of Cooper and Franklin's pitch, he recalled thinking, "This is different. It's not my cup of tea, but I know I haven't seen it before. Let's give it a shot." Some Barstool stars stick with the show while others move on, as Cooper eventually did. "We lose talent almost every year," Portnoy said. "You just hope that you can replace it. In practice, it's not always so smooth." Cooper, he claims, told him she and Franklin had a plan to say that they were sexually harassed at Barstool to get out of their contract. The dirty little secret nobody else knew about, Call Her Daddy. The girls hated each other, Cooper said. Franklin didn't respond to requests for comment. Barstool was humming when state legislators began to legalize online gambling. That led Penn Entertainment, a casino company eager to reach the Stoolies, to pay about $550 million for Barstool. That venture soon soured because the scandal-prone Portnoy was apparently not a good fit for the highly regulated gambling industry. Penn cut ties in 2023 and allowed Portnoy to buy his baby back for $1. The pirate ship then returned to the high seas. Portnoy doesn't like to be reminded of it, but at key moments in Barstool's rise, scantily clad women come to the foray, including aspiring models hawking his free newspaper. In the internet era, Portnoy's loyal smoke show of the day featured photos of a hot girl nominated by a friend or a reader. Barstool and Portnoy have had other girl issues. Some stem from tasteless jokes that have buttressed accusations of misogyny. Those expecting an apology may be disappointed. Instead, in Cancel Me If You Can, he insists that he's been taken out of context. Cancel Me If You Can is compelling, though, as an unconventional management tone. On recruiting talent, Portnoy writes, hire great, talented people and let them run wild. As for strategy, Barstool just feels its way along, trying new things, selling t-shirts, live concerts, and adjusting on the fly. It turns out that haphazard approach worked well in an ever-shifting media landscape. Barstool started in the MySpace era and has since watched Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch vie for supremacy. Meanwhile, some of its former talents have gone on to start independent ventures, like Cooper and her media lifestyle brand Unwell, which has acquired podcasts to produce alongside the hit Call Her Daddy. It's the opposite of the Unwell Network, for sure, in the sense that we didn't set out trying to do anything that we've done, Portnoy says. That makes it hard to say what comes next. Portnoy is now at that level of wealth where it seems that the money can't help but make more money. Among other ventures, he was recently cut into what was possibly the most sought-after initial public offering ever, like, I had access to the SpaceX thing. Meanwhile, the business is more challenging. New streaming services have allowed influencers to quickly achieve stardom on their own. The ambitious pirate, now looking at 50, sounds oddly subdued. I could just walk away and never be heard from again. He was gazing at Nantucket Harbor, where ferries were turning toward the mainland. Once it was a reminder the vacation was ending. These days, it stirs other feelings. It makes me appreciate that I don't have to go back to work, Portnoy said. That was the dream. This is from the obituary page. Martin Leibowitz, 1936 to 2026. A whiz at math, and he transformed bond investing. As a Salomon Brothers bond researcher, he came up with formulas that still drive the financial markets. When Martin Leibowitz joined the Wall Street bond trading firm Salomon Brothers in 1969 at the age of 33, he knew a lot about math and very little about bonds. He asked his new colleagues to explain how they calculated a bond's potential total return to the investor. They handed him their code, a fat yield book with hundreds of pages filled with columns of numbers. If you knew the annual interest rate and the price of a bond, you could find the yield. My initial reaction, Leibowitz said in a 2017 podcast for the MIT Laboratory for Financial Engineering, was you've got to be kidding. Valuing a bond was much more complicated, he realized. Among other things, it depended on forecasts of how much the holder would earn by reinvesting the interest payments. It also depended on such factors as whether the borrower had the right to redeem the bonds early and whether there were better opportunities for the investor in other markets. Leibowitz, who died May 6th at 89, was a forerunner of the quaints, math whizzes who would become major factors in financial markets 2 decades later. Applying math, he found smarter ways to invest in bonds, leaving a legacy of insights and formulas that still inform financial markets. Leibowitz developed trading strategies allowing pension funds and insurers to match their future income with liabilities. His research also facilitated analysis of new types of securities, including mortgage-backed bonds. While bonds were his main focus, his analytical tools provided insights into markets for stocks and other investments. In the late 1960s, bond investors tended to hold its securities until final maturity. That kept things simple, but frequently led to subpar returns, Leibowitz argued. Often, he said, it was better to sell a bond and reinvest in something that provided higher returns. Investors gradually responded to his advice by trading bonds more frequently, generating more income for Salomon Brothers. When he started the firm, bond traders lacked computers. They spent much of their time shouting numbers at one another and into phones. Many seemed to regard Leibowitz as an interloping egghead. Then interest rates rose above 6%, the maximum rate covered by yield books. Traders had no idea how to calculate yields at the higher rates. They discovered Leibowitz could do that for them on what he called the little clicky-clack computer terminal on his desk. All of a sudden, many of the most senior partners of the firm would line up behind my desk, waiting for me to give a yield or a price which they desperately needed to get a trade done, he said in a 2015 interview with AQR Capital Management. He was rumpled and smiling. Institutional Investor magazine reported in 1988 and moved at a casual, beard scratching pace. But despite his professorial air, however, he dished out practical advice rather than academic musing, the magazine said. Henry Kaufman, Salmon's former chief economist, known as Dr. Doom for his bearish forecast in the 1970s, recalled Leibowitz as a quiet man who did his analytical work exceedingly well. Before Leibowitz, said Andrew W. Lowe, professor of finance at MIT, bond investing was more of an art than a science. TIAA, a pension fund manager, recruited Leibowitz in 1995 as vice chairman and chief investment officer. In 2004, he joined the research team at Morgan Stanley, where he remained for 2 decades. Martin Leibowitz was born June 19, 1936, in York, Pennsylvania. His father, Jacob Leibowitz, a Russian immigrant who owned a men's clothing store, died when Martin was 4. The family then moved to Baltimore, where his mother, Regina Rosenberg Leibowitz, worked as a saleswoman in a department store. As at public school in Baltimore, Leibowitz wrote in a biographical note, "I covered 3 grades in 2 years, but I was a misfit and I struggled." After the family moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, he thrived in school and skipped more grades, allowing him to graduate from high school at the age of 15. After babysitting for 25 cents an hour, he dreamed up a more profitable alternative, acting as agent, lining up jobs for other sitters. They paid him a nickel for every 25 cents earned. He excelled at chess and won a Ford Foundation scholarship to attend the University of Chicago. Though he figured he could have earned his bachelor's degree at 17, Leibowitz has decided to slow down, explore Chicago, and play on the university's chess team. He earned a bachelor's degree in liberal arts and a master's in physics. He turned down a fellowship that would have allowed him to earn a doctorate in physics and instead looked for work in operations research, which involves the application of math to organizational and management problems. He liked the idea of using math to deal with real-world situations. Through a friend, Leibowitz found a management job at a carpet company. He designed warehouse facilities, used computers to analyze sales, and earned 2 patents on methods of packaging and storing carpet rolls. He took evening classes to earn a doctorate in math at New York University's Koran Institute. While at NYU, he met Sarah Fryer, who was majoring in psychology and biology. She was wary of his advances, but he finally persuaded her to accept a glass of milk. They married in 1966. One of her uncles, Sidney Homer, who was an economist and partner at Salomon Brothers, he asked Leibowitz for help solving a math problem involving bonds. Their talks led to Leibowitz's job at Salomon. The firm was eventually absorbed into Citigroup. His survivors include his wife, along with their 3 daughters, Kim L. Targoff, Becky T. Peterson, and Karen L. Leibowitz, all medical doctors, and 8 grandchildren. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the June 27, 28th issue of the Wall Street Journal Review. We read from the Wall Street Journal Review every Thursday at 7 p.m. Your reader has been Jeff Shapiro. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times. At 9 o'clock, we have Harper's Magazine. At 10 o'clock, we have episode number 9 of Never Flinch by Stephen King. Stay with us for these readings and more. If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability